Chris here, back in the living room one last time with Kelly. Going to be talking finally about the rules for harmony as it developed in Europe over the course of the late Middle Ages through the Renaissance and especially in the centuries that followed. By around 1600, Europeans figured out that they can use harmonies to increase the amount of tension that a listener feels while they're listening to the piece. A listener might not even be aware that it's the harmonies that are causing them to feel the tension. The listener is simply feeling that tension. And like I say, by 1600s, the year is 1600, the Europeans have figured out that they can do this and they decide that it's a good thing. They want to establish and prolong tension that way. The idea being that once you've established that tension, that it feels all the more satisfying for the listener when that tension is finally resolved. Works exactly the same way in a novel or a movie or a TV show or whatever. You meet the main character, you come to like the main character, you start to worry about the main character a little bit, you root for the main character as they're fighting, and then finally it feels like a big triumph and it's very satisfying when the main character finally wins in the end. Now, what they did was they established a kind of home set of notes, a set of notes that would act as home, and this set of notes they called the tonic chord. Thank you. They then said, okay, in order to get a sense of contrast here, a sense of tension, we need a bad guy for this, a sort of contrast for the tonic chord, and this is what came to be called the dominant chord. Right, and so you can set up the tonic versus the dominant, where you play a tonic, move from there to a dominant to create some tension, and then finally resolve the tension by arriving home again at the tonic. Now you can take that basic set of chords and make an even greater sense of tension, prolong that tension by expanding, making more complicated the series of chords that you're playing. And by adding even more chords, if you're doing it exactly right, you can prolong the tension even farther. And the rules that evolved over the course of centuries, from the 1600s through the 1700s and through most of the 1800s as well, as to how to do that effectively, how to create that tension and prolong the tension so that it really feels incredibly satisfying when the tension is finally resolved. These rules are called tonal harmony. I'll sometimes use the word tonality essentially as a synonym for tonal harmony. So that's what tonal harmony is. It's the rules that dictate which chords you should move to in order to prolong and heighten even more the tension that you've already established. And this became a main focus of European composers, as I say. Through the 1700s, they were interested in figuring out how can we prolong the tension for several minutes at a time. And as the 1700s went into the 1800s, the concern became how can we prolong the tension for maybe a whole hour? How can we use the tension that's created to tell a story, just the way novels do? Until finally, by around 1870 or thereabouts, a German composer named Richard Wagner, he used German pronunciation, naturally enough. When you see the name, it'll look like Richard Wagner to you. Richard Wagner is how a German would pronounce it. Richard Wagner in around 1870 wrote an opera tetralogy, that's a set of 4 operas, that sets up tension and doesn't resolve it until 18 hours later. So tension, establishing tension and using the rules of tonality, the rules of tonal harmony, has a major focus of European composers from the 1600 all the way through the 1800s. And as we cross to the end of the 1800s into the 1900s, all of a sudden some composers are going to be asking some very big questions as to the necessity of doing that.